books aren't there.
I'm sorry?
What is the inhabitant? Is it a person? Could it be something besides people?
Mm-hmm.
It gives the indication it's people. But I don't know for sure. Good
I
question.
can look it up.
So anyway, the focus isn't, well, when is the name written, and when is the book's closed, and when is this, and when is this? What's the focus?
That your name is written.
That your name is written. Your name is written. Paul told some of his people that your name is written in the book, fellow co-workers. Don't get it blotted out. It's kind of the idea. You know, humbling, doing what God says, I think will keep your name from being blotted out. I mean, if you go against him, I think it can be blotted out. Personal opinion, but choose God, choose man. Yeah, and one verse that came to mind earlier, for us, God is for us, who can be against us? Who can be against us?
Hebrews 6 and 10 chapters, will give you some reading on that.
Who was against Yeshua?
Satan.
And a lot of people.
You naked?
You know, if God is for us, who can be against us? Everybody else. But we understand that, and we keep moving forward anyway.
But we got God on our side, we got wind anyway. don't we?
That's right. As long as we stay on his side.
You know, it's interesting, I'm looking at this other NASB translation, 17:8. And it says in this, and it says, and those who dwell on the earth, because it starts, the beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth will wonder, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. That's a little bit different. There's an implication that they're just wondering whose name. It still could say that every name was written.
Still could.
Yeah.
Based on that
Yeah.
translation. So our goal,
Some are blotted out, too.
yeah,
Right.
our goal is to figure out, is to go to Scripture and look for consistency. Look for, because this is what we're held accountable to. So, look at all the translations. People at work ask, well, what Bible do you read? What translation? I said, how much time you got? Let me tell you how many I have at home, because I want to see all the different perspectives, as many as I can. Because if I limit myself to NIV or King James or whatever, then I'm limiting myself in my vision. I'm not going to see as much. I might see something. I'm not going to say I'm going to see it wrong, but I might see something. But I might miss so many other things, which is why we get together like this. Because I have a viewpoint, Whitney has a viewpoint, Carol has a viewpoint, all the way around the room, all have a viewpoint. We want to bring them all together and see if we can get unity and understanding and revelation from the Spirit, because we're not going to teach each other, He's going to teach us. We're going to get it from Him.
You know, I don't know if it's interesting, but the term when they use the dwell on the earth, the Greek is katokeo, but it's interesting because it says to house permanently. I wonder if that's not a reference to those who are his for eternity. To house permanently, you know?
Or those who won't dwell in temporary dwellings on the flip side of the coin.
Yeah. Mhm.
Interesting. See, I don't know if I have anything else up here.
He does have the beginning and the end.
This was the verse I should have this at the beginning. But every mouth in the whole world, because, as we've seen about, probably getting sick of seeing this slide,
Mhm.
but I keep going back to it because that's where we are. Now, we still got a little bit of time. You guys good for 15 minutes or so?
You don't have any 30,
Go nowhere.
or 3019 is actually what was
They've got the kitchen in there.
T-shirts first.
Nice. All right.
That go to church here.
Are we still in Leviticus? I don't even know for sure. Leviticus 16. Flip over there real quick. This is kind of an aside, just an interesting little thing. We're going to try and tie a couple things together before we're done for the day. Something as Gabriel and I were talking last night about this, just some things started kind of popping. that's not on slide, so I'm just gonna leave that one up there. Leviticus 16, verse 17, which we read a little bit ago. No one is to be in the tent of meeting from the time Aaron goes in to make atonement in the most holy place until he comes out, having made atonement for himself, his household, and the whole community of Israel. I'm going to erase this because I'm going to put, since I don't have them on a slide. That was Leviticus 16, 17. No one in the tent of meeting. So, they were outside, nearby, but they weren't inside. So nobody comes in. All right, flip over to Hebrews 10. Just some interesting things that we're thinking of. Actually, let's go to Hebrews 8. Just kind of start there. I do want to pick up a few things, since we kind of touched on, my lovely bride touched on Isaiah 58. Thank you, by the way. And thinking about Isaiah 58, it's not your sacrifices and your fasts and your, it's mine. So just as you're reading, keep those kind of things in mind. Hebrews 8, let's go to verse 3, Hebrews 8:3. Every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it was necessary for this one also to have something to offer. Speaking, of course, of Yeshua. So let's back up to verse 1. The point of what we are saying is this: we do have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven, and who serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, not by man. So we get the picture of the heavenly tabernacle. Yeshua is in there doing the duties of the high priest. Verse 3. Every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices, and so it was necessary for this one also to have something to offer. If he were on earth, and I've got a little side note where the shadows are, my own side note, that's my own ad-lib on that one, because it's coming up in verse 5. If he were on earth, he would not be a priest, for there are already men who offer the gifts prescribed by the law. If you remember, when Yeshua was on earth, he did not go serve the tabernacle as a temple as a priest. Why not?
He's in Judah.
Wrong
It
house.
was the tribe of Levi.
Wasn't a Levite. Tribe of Judah. So he's excluded just on the basis of that. Quick and easy. They, the ones who are on earth, serve at a sanctuary that is a copy and shadow of what is in heaven. When you're standing in front of a light, the real thing is you, and the shadow is on the floor or on the wall or something. It's just the shadow, the real exists. So the temple is just a shadow of what really exists. We got to keep that in mind. There's up in heaven, however many heavens up it is, or whatever that discussion is.
Yeah, and
There is a tabernacle.
you can see a shadow and still know it's a man,
Exactly.
but you don't still get the true picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, this is why Moses was warned when he was about to build the tabernacle. See to it you make everything according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. But the ministry Yeshua has received is as superior to theirs as the priesthood, is what it should say. The covenant of which he is mediator is superior to the old one. It is founded on better promises. So there's two things going on parallel. You've got the ministry on earth that the Levites are doing, but then we have what Yeshua is doing in heaven, which is superior. It's higher. It's more permanent. It's not temporal and temporary. It's permanent. Okay. Let's go over to
Just before you leave that, can I
Yes.
ask you, you made that little comment that's really important. And you draw that from context prior to 8, right?
which comment?
That covenant is an improper word.
Yes.
It's a priesthood he's talking about. Everything here, he's talking about this priesthood, this thing, the priesthood, this high
Right.
priest, this our high priest.
Yeah, that's very.
And all of a sudden, they switch gears and throw in covenant. It's the
Yeah.
priesthood that's inadequate.
And there is, for that priesthood, there was an agreement in place of what they would do. And
Mhm.
that agreement would change with Yeshua,
Right.
very clearly, because there's a set of rules for these guys, and there's a different set of rules for this guy.
An atonement needed to be made for those priests because they sinned
And they died.
and they died, right.
So they couldn't atone for each other in that
That's why
regard
this is going to be a
continually.
better priesthood.
Bingo. Not relying on the
Right.
guys. Okay, let's see where I wanted to go next on this one. I think in chapter 9, there's a couple things that I want to bring out because I asked the question earlier, if Day of Atonement atones for all the sins, why do we have sin offerings? Daily sin offerings from Leviticus, early chapters there, 4 I think it is. Look down, and this is chapter 9 of Hebrews, down to verse 11. When Messiah came as high priest of the good things that are already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not man-made, that is to say, not a part of this creation. He did not enter by the means of the blood of goats and calves, Leviticus 16, but entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them, so that they are outwardly clean. How much more, then, will the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God? And as we went through this on our Wednesday night studies at home, what jumped out was cleanse our consciences. Because it says the blood of goats and bulls and ashes of a heifer cleanse the outside. They're ceremonially clean. They can, what you see, they can now come and present offerings and do service and such like that. But the blood of Messiah cleanses our consciences from acts that lead to death. Our thoughts.
It's the only one that forgave a willful sin also, right?
Yeah. Forgives willful sin.
Yeah, his atonement.
His atonement.
Yeah.
Yes, his atonement. Hang on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so keep that consciences in mind. Go down to chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Let's go to, Hebrews 10:1. The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming. So the law is a shadow. There's some kind of reality that exists to cast the shadow. Not the realities themselves. For this reason, it can never, by the same sacrifices repeated endlessly year after year, make perfect those who draw near to worship. If it could, would they not have stopped being offered? For the worshipers would have been cleansed once for all, would no longer have felt guilty for their sins.
Mine says consciousness.
Conscience again. Yeah, it's an inward. Verse 3, but those sacrifices are an annual reminder of sins, like we could ever forget. But it's an annual reminder because it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. The sins were atoned for. Cleansing on the outside. You are now ceremonially clean. You can come and do your service. You can come make offering, whatever. But the sins were not taken away because they were still in our heads. I'm sorry?
They were rolled forward to the benefit of Christ.
Yeah. He's the only sacrifice that can take away the inside, the remembrance, the thoughts, the guilt, the conscience that gets all wrapped up. Verse 5, therefore Messiah came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased. Then I said, here I am. It is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, O God. First he said, sacrifices and offerings, burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not desire, nor were you pleased with them, although the Lord required them to be made. Then he said, here I am. I have come to do your will. He sets aside the first to establish the second. And by that will, we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Yeshua once for all. So, the conscience, the inside, the feeling guilty is let me think of the way to word it so I don't trip over the words. I know the right way to word it.
It's mercy.
Because, you know, he sets aside the first to establish the second. He sets aside the whole Levitical system,
No, because it'll return.
because it'll
We
return.
could study once saved, always saved, against these little chapters,
Yeah.
not a study.
Right. Here I am, I have come to do your will. What is God's will? Have to go back and search that out. You're pleased to be in that relationship, that covenant with him. Verse 11, this is what I wanted to get to. Verse 11, day after day, every priest stands and performs his religious duties. Again and again, he offers the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. And the picture I always get with that is day after day, I'm putting toothpaste on the shelf. Day after day, I'm stocking the candy. Day after day, I'm doing this. Day after day, you're driving the truck. Day after day, you're driving the truck all over creation. Day after day after day, monotonous, drudgery. And it's pointless, it can't do anything. This is the point I get in my head. But it can, it atones for sins and allows the people who I am a priest on their behalf, it allows them to come in and to do what they need to do, to bring their offerings, to bring sacrifices, to perform service. But I'm there day after day. I wonder if it was only 2 weeks or a month, depending on, you know, the courses, because can you imagine? Day after day, slit the throat, pour the blood, sprinkle the blood, put the fat on there. Just think about the mechanical process of it, how,
It's twice a day,
at least, well, 2
Mhm.
times a day
Yeah.
for however many people
right?
we're bringing offerings. Okay, turtle doves, turtle doves. Oh yeah, wring the neck. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do with those. You know, where's the manual?
No, you're not supposed to, you're supposed to just pop them, right?
Well, it depends on what it is. All right, verse 12. But when this priest, Yeshua, had offered for all time one sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God. Since that time, he waits for his enemies to be made his footstool, because by one sacrifice he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy. That was the actual verse I really wanted to. That was the point of going to Hebrews with that verse. It says he waits. Where is he waiting?
At the right hand of God.
The right hand of God. He's in the Holy of Holies. If you remember, the sacrifice, when atonement's being made, who can be in the tent of meeting?
Nobody.
Nobody. Yeshua is the high priest, made a better sacrifice, and where is he?
At the right hand
At
of
the
God.
right hand, waiting for his enemies to be made a footstool. So therefore, who can go in the heavenly tabernacle, tent of meeting? Right now.
Are you trying to say that Aunt Zelda is not in heaven?
That what?
Aunt Zelda is not in heaven, or?
I'm not saying anything about that.
Well, but I'm just,
I'm not even.
Aunt Zelda.
What did it say?
I said, are you saying that Aunt Zelda's not in heaven?
Oh.
No, that's not what I'm saying is inside the tent of meeting, the temple in the heavens, nobody can be there. Right now. That's what I'm saying. Now, go to Revelation 15. This is a chapter I've got to do some study on, because as I was reading this back again this morning, I've got all kinds of questions I got to figure this out. Revelation 15, starting in verse 5. After this, I looked in heaven the temple. I looked, and in heaven the temple, that is, the tabernacle of the testimony, was opened. Out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues. They were dressed in clean, shining linen and wore golden sashes around their chests. Okay, so who's in the tabernacle of the testimony? In this
Angels.
vision, the angels.
right?
What are they wearing?
Why?
White linen.
Why? Why are they wearing white
Or
linen?
it says clothes of
Clean and bright.
Right.
Because can you go inside wearing anything but clean white linen?
No.
Matthew
Oh,
22.
but-
Gotta have the right clothes.
But isn't Satan there?
He's an angel, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, there's
He
an element, he
masquerades.
is wearing, he's
Or
obviously,
something. Right, so. All right, so they're dressed in clean, shining linen and wore golden sashes around their chests. Then one of the four living creatures gave to the seven angels 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. Just tying that kind of back to Leviticus 16. The picture that I want you to see with this little aside, is while atonement's being made, no one is to go in the tent of meeting. Yeshua has gone in to make atonement and waits at the right hand. In Revelation, the judgment comes, the 7 bowls come, but Yeshua hasn't come yet. He's still there, waiting. Because then we go to, if you're over here and find it,
oh, gosh, Tom, tent of meeting, okay.
you find the one I'm looking for. Sure they didn't write that one down. But the thought being anyway, that he's waiting until his enemies are made his footstool. If he's waiting, that implies when that happens, something is going to happen. He's going to be done waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And what's he going to do? Return.
Do what?
Claim his
Return.
kingdom.
Claim his kingdom. So there's a little more to that verse than just rules and regulation.
And even if you will, with the same picture, what does the high priest do? When he comes out to the tabernacle, to the altar, to the people,
Exactly.
to offer, whatever, then they go through the sacrifice, they send away the Azazel and whatever, but he comes out to the people, basically, is after that period within the Holy of Holies.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't he do the same thing?
He's not referring to Christ coming, is he, Don't think so.
Is he referring to?
Just 17.
No, this is not.
This is still Old Testament,
That's
Yeah,
referring
this
to the
is
high
not
priest.
referring to Messiah at all. But it's the picture of what the high priest does on Day of Atonement, which is where we're getting to in the end of Revelation, is he's waiting. Angels come out with the bowls of wrath. Enemies are going to be made a footstool, and that's what he's waiting for. Then he comes out. Just some thoughts, like I said, we've got a little more study to do on it. Because we were kind of talking last night, that's what, the picture started all of a sudden coming a little bit clearer. So, for whatever it's worth.
Adjusting the rabbit ears?
Yeah. Hold my arm up like this. Because then after the judgment happens, what happens? Right?
He returns to claim
He
his bride.
returns, gathers his people, begins to reign. So kind of, just to add a different little layer to Day of Atonement. Just to throw a little something at you for your own personal study to go figure out. Because this something just hit me today that I've got to do some looking. This Revelation 20 with the books being opened, when does that happen?
Yeah.
Because it's different than what I've always thought. So I've got to do some, we individually need to do some figuring out when that is, because chronologically, it's after the 1,000 years, not before.
Well, it says judgment at the throne of God. It's Revelation 20:12.
Mhm.
And I saw the dead, the great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books according to their deeds.
Right. Which, if the millennial kingdom is Sukkot, that judgment is after Sukkot. So just some things to figure out, so.
And would that be the second?
So there won't be a resurrection on the Day of Atonement before,
Those trumpets.
the millennium is what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything at all. I'm saying the judgment that's right here in Revelation 20 is after the millennial kingdom.
Right,
I don't know,
Of the dead,
this says
of the
nothing
dead.
about resurrection.
Judgment of the dead.
Saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. I don't know if that's, the dead came up and then stood at that time, or they've been alive for 1,000 years.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I've gotta
because
do
I mean,
some study
obviously,
on
when the trumpet sounds, the dead in Christ
it.
shall
Then
rise.
Christ shall rise.
But is that a select
That's not
group?
the same.
Is that,
There's some study.
great, we got another year.
At least you think we did.
There's something to do next
Unless we're
year.
really off, and we're gonna hear that Trump in about 3 weeks. Yeah. Well, that's all I've got, so thank you for your
Woo-hoo.
Thank you.
attention and participation.